Documentation and why. Roscommon County Childcare Committee, in collaboration with Longford County Childcare Committee and the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, are delighted to bring you this podcast where we will now talk about how are we capturing the story of the child as it's happening through documentation. How do we create quick snapshots of the child's play, and why is it so important for us to do this?
Another key principle is documentation. I know people hear documentation and they think 6-page reports on every child. Documentation is ongoing, telling the story of the child's learning, the classroom's learning as it's happening. How are we capturing the stories? How are we telling the stories and reflecting on the stories so that we can think about where we're going with our own learning? What did we see? What did we notice? What did we wonder? How are we putting those documentations on the walls? How are we putting them on blogs? How are we bringing them to parents' night or teachers' night? Keeping the stories fresh and alive has actually never been easier. As much as I feel smartphones may be draining some of our concentration and time, they're actually really helpful in a way to get quick snapshots, to get a 2-minute video clip. We use video cameras and video phones, just like he has that camera running right now. We would just put it on in the block area and hit play, and you never know. We saw these kids were struggling with building bridges out of wooden blocks. That's really hard to get their little cars to go across. Every day, if we just watched this clip, we would see something different. One day I went in and the teacher had found a blueprint of a bridge on transparent paper, and she had it taped to the wall. What were the kids going to do differently today? Someone went to the library and got a big book of bridges of the world and was standing in the block area. What were they going to do then? We notice, we observe, we document, we create new provocations for learning. It is so powerful. And I remember that the end of that, when the kids were really getting it together, one of our little 3-year-olds was up in the 5-year-old room laying on the floor watching the big boys, and he said, if you keep doing that, they're going to fall off, you know. And the older boy looked at him and he said, you should do this. They did it. It worked. And the older boy turned around and he said, Kale, you're a genius. None of us saw this. We only saw it at the end of the day on the video clip. How do we talk about relationships, life skills, bridge building? We have to be capturing some of these moments in documentation. And we have to free ourselves up. I think some days we go through the whole hamster wheel of washing the counters and setting up this and doing that we're not present. If we're not present, it's very hard to document the work that's happening. Now, do those things have to be done? Of course they do. But they should not take every minute of our day. We should be shifting that time and energy into the work of the children. So why do we do this documentation? We want to tell the stories of the work. We want to help children reflect on the stories. Some of those video clips, like from the block building, we would show those at circle time. What's been happening? Oh my gosh, this is so hard. We're never going to get a bridge to go over the cars. And we tried this. And the kids would start telling the stories of their work. Bring a few photographs. We created books, just like my binders here, with the plastic sheets. We'd take pictures of different block buildings that were going on. And it turns out they were all building houses and creating neighborhoods or building a zoo. So we could then learn what they were doing, hear their stories, and bring it in. You want to find ways that documentation helps you reflect on the work, and it also helps you plan for the work. It also helps parents increase their awareness of the work. This little girl came to us from a Russian-speaking family who really felt strongly that if she spoke English before 4, she would lose her Russian. So they kept her out of school, and they kept her away from American television, and she spoke beautiful Russian. But she came into a 4-year-old classroom with no English. Well, did we know who she was every single day? What her mood was? Look at her. This is how she went out and about in her fairy outfit and her everyday different ensemble. She was able to draw. She was able to express herself. They were working, and this is a very interesting project, but on our property they were building a new barn for the maintenance facility. And the children would go down once a week and meet with the architects and the builders and hear what was happening next, and they would sketch and draw and take photos of the building. and the building manager would answer all their questions. I have beautiful pictures of him interacting with them. So she's down there doing a sketch, of the building. But this quote to me just ties it all together. Children have the right to use many materials in order to discover and communicate what they know, understand, wonder about, question, feel, and imagine. In this way, they make their thinking visible through their many natural languages. She didn't need to speak to us. Her thinking was very visible. And when she felt safe and respected and valued, what happened to her language? She almost went from no English to fluent English. It was amazing how quickly she was able to communicate once she felt safe to start having those conversations with us. So we want to create that safety, and we want to create ways that children can express themselves and share their worlds with us.